Very good. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to call to order the Transportation Agency of Monterey County Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, October 26th, 2022. Will we please have a roll call?
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Here.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips. District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Here.
District 4, Supervisor Askew. District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Here.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Del Rey Oaks. City of Gonzales.
Here.
City of Greenfield.
Here.
City of King City.
Present.
City of Marina.
Present.
City of Monterey.
I'm here.
City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas.
Here.
City of Sand City.
Here.
City of Seaside.
Yeah.
City of Soledad.
Here.
Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Here.
Monterey Bay Air Resources District.
Here.
Monterey Regional Airport District. Monterey Salinas Transit. City of Watsonville. CSUMB.
Here.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you
And
very much.
District 4, County of Monterey is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
City
you,
of Del Rey.
Supervisor.
City of Del Rey Oaks is also here. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
the delay.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you all very much for being present. And now, if you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's just get into the meeting. Is there any member of the public who wishes to make any comments on anything that is not listed on today's agenda? See if we have any hands raised. I see no hands raised this morning. And so we will close public comment and move forward with our consent agenda. Is there any member of the board who wishes to pull anything that is on today's consent agenda? Is there any member of the public who would like to pull or comment on anything on today's consent agenda? Seeing no hands raised, then I will seek a motion. Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second, Phillips.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion. I'm so sorry, but someone made a comment that I did not catch. At any rate, we have a motion and we have a second. So I will ask for a roll call vote.
Can I ask who made the motion?
Potter.
Thank you, Potter. District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Aye.
District 2, Supervisor Phillips.
Aye.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Aye.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Aye.
District 5, Supervisor Adams.
Aye.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Aye.
City of Del Rey Oaks.
Aye.
City of Gonzales.
Aye.
City of Greenfield.
Aye.
City of King City.
Aye.
City of Marina.
Aye.
City of Monterey.
Aye.
City of Pacific Grove. City of Salinas.
Aye.
City of Sand City.
Aye.
City of Seaside. City of Seaside.
Aye.
Thank you. City of Soledad,
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. And now we will take the time to see if there's any member of the board who wishes to make comments on anything this morning. Anything not on today's agenda. Are we seeing any hands raised? As I look through, I am not.
No, I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, good. All right. If there is no member of the board who wishes to comment on anything on today's agenda, we will move forward to see if there's any member of the public, again, who wishes to comment on anything that is not on today's agenda. And I'm hopeful that I took public comment on consent. I believe that I did. Okay, so let's move forward then, and we will go to item number 4, which is to receive the Transportation Agency Employee of the Quarter, which will be going to Janeka Strauss, and this will be presented by Todd Muck.
Thank you. I would like to congratulate Yannicka Strauss. She's been selected as the Employee of the Quarter for the Transportation Agency for the quarter of July 1st to September 30th. We, as employees of the agency, recognize Yannicka for having a great attitude, for her professionalism, and for her hard work. Most notably, we appreciate her hard work on the Greenfield Safe Route to School Steering Committee and the participatory budgeting process that she's been leading, as well as her assistance with the upcoming Safe Route Salinas Valley Steering Committees as part of the Safe Route to School program. We also appreciate her great work managing the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. So on behalf of the Board of Directors and staff at the Transportation Agency, it is our great pleasure to recognize Yannicka for her excellent work.
Thank you and congratulations, Yannicka. Would you like to make a couple of comments?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, it's been a pleasure working for TAMC and getting to know Monterey County. And I feel very fortunate to work for an agency that values safe mobility for all users. And I look forward to continuing that work with you all. And yeah, thank you for the support and for the acknowledgement for my work.
Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. I see a number of board members are applauding you, board and staff, with their hands. Is there any member of the board that wishes to make public comment and make comment on Yannicka's award? I'm not seeing any hands. Thank you. Any member of the public that wishes to comment? Thank you. Okay, with that, we will certainly just say congratulations again. Well deserved, Yannicka. And now we will move forward and we will go to item number 4, which is to receive a presentation from Point C, the agency's corridor advisor, regarding the status and the agency's efforts to deliver Measure X projects along US 101 south of Salinas, State Route 68, and State Route 156. This will be presented by Doug Bilsey and Tony Harris. And I don't know, Todd, if you want to make comments?
I'll let Doug introduce Tony.
Great,
Good morning,
thank you.
Chair and board members. I'd like to introduce Tony Harris, which his team was selected to be TAMC's corridor advisor through a competitive and comprehensive selection process. And we found Tony to be one of the most respected transportation professionals in the country, with experience in the state and private sector, and always focused on funding and delivering projects. So his experience includes being Caltrans Chief Deputy Director, where he oversaw statewide design, construction, traffic operations, planning, transit, and administration. He was also the Caltrans Director for District 7, where he was always obtaining funding and improving project delivery techniques. He's provided strategic services on numerous corridor projects on the state highway system, and he successfully identified grants and implemented some innovative construction management techniques we want to use here. And so now we're going to ask Tony to review some of the challenges and opportunities on some of our most important projects on the state highway system. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Just testing, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me share my screen. And can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
Okay,
I speak.
well, all right. So first step successful so far. So good morning, Chair and TAMC board members. It really is a pleasure to be able to provide an update to you today. It's been very enjoyable to spend time the last few months working with TAMC and also Caltrans on the 3 projects that was identified in particular. So as Doug mentioned, our role is really to basically, we're looking at the delivery of these 3 projects, how is delivery going, and then maybe advise and identify on how we can use the most valuable resource you have, which is your Measure X funding, so we can move these projects forward on 68, 101 South of Salinas, and State Route 156. We are going through the process or reviewing those schedules and looking at ways to implement and do funding strategies. How can we be creative, and how can we leverage those funds to attract other state and federal funds as well? And that requires us to work closely and coordinate with the overall project delivery team at Caltrans, TAMC, and others to help facilitate that overall process. So what is our approach? Well, our approach is really, and starting with the fact that when you talk about transportation improvements, it's really about making sure we got a solution that really meets the need, but also it's got to be a solution that can be implemented. Transportation has an impact on safety, and it also has an impact on the quality of life of the users of the system overall. Our approach is to work in a team environment to define the solution, garner and create consensus on that solution and support, and then utilize that consensus and support to attain funding and actually implement it. I'm a firm believer is that once you garner that support and you attain funding, you really need to move forward in an expedited manner for implementation, because the world is constantly changing. So you see on this slide here, is really about, let's define the solution. The world of transportation is changing, and there's a lot of emerging policies and things, and we need to figure out how we can take these projects and align with those so we can attain that funding. You have the ability to leverage additional state and federal funding because of your Measure X dollars, but just as important, throughout the process and on an ongoing and continuous basis, building off of work that's already been done, it's important to engage with the community and stakeholders to make sure they, one, understand the process, understand the project, making sure we have the right solution, and also activate them so they're there in support when we go to pursue funding and actual implementation. So just briefly here, I do want to touch on some of the things that I see and aware of that's taking place in transportation. A key partner that we're working with here is Caltrans as the owner operator of the transportation system. What I have on your screen is really some of the key elements that we are having to think about as we move forward with these projects. The California Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. This is something that was put together by the state, and is laying out those key policy areas and values that they will want to see in transportation projects as they move forward. Caltrans has used that to generate what they call their investment strategy. And we want to be able to co-apply and work with Caltrans on future upcoming funding opportunities at both the state and the federal level. So if you see some of the key things that are important here is safety. I'm a firm believer that we need to deal with safety constantly. Active transportation. Really with active transportation is, moving up cars is important, but being able to focus on how we move people in various different modes, including bikes, pedestrians, and how do we address that as part of the themes or our improvements. And then you note here also the part about public engagement. There's a greater emphasis in making sure that we don't just develop a project and then once we have a draft, send it out to the public, and give them like a limited time review. We want to be able to have ongoing, meaningful engagement on projects throughout. And that's one way to ensure that we're coming up with the right solution. And then the last one you'll see here, leveraging funds. You are in a great position because of your measure dollars to be able to use that to leverage funding from other ones in particular. So let's talk a little bit about the Pacific projects that I've been spending time looking at. And let's start with State Route 68. The project is currently in the preliminary design and environmental stage right now. What the opportunities I really see here is it has a series of intersection improvements and also some proposed wildlife crossings. Those types of improvements align very well with some of the emerging policy areas because it's focusing on safety, it's focusing on wildlife movement and the environment. But one of the things that we have the opportunity here is a lot of times projects are developed with their own schedule, with not thinking about, okay, if I get this phase done by this time, then I'm positioned the project to actually go after funding. What's important about this project is making sure we complete the environmental phase so that we can position this project to go after state Senate Bill 1 funding in 2024. I think it's a prime candidate. I think it could compete very well, and we should plan with that. And that's a conversation I have been engaging with Caltrans and TAMC staff, that we need to have that focus in mind in particular. I think the other opportunity we have is engaging and continue to engage with the community and stakeholders throughout the quarter to make sure they understand what the improvements are, what has been proposed, and not just necessarily wait until the draft environmental documents available. We want people to be informed and understand the project and able to give meaningful input. Now, it is a challenge quarter because frankly, it's beautiful, all right? It's a scenic quarter, and as such, it's constrained. It's got limited right of way in that regards. And we want to make sure we respect that, and whatever improvements we do, we want it to be minimizing the impacts in the area. We want to not change the character of the route, but we do want to make it better from a safety and a traffic flow perspective overall. You see a bullet there that talks about transit and bike and pedestrian facility. That doesn't necessarily mean we got to put transit, bike, pedestrian facilities throughout the entire quarter, but in aligning with current policy and the focus on multimodal and active transportation, what are some of the elements that we could possibly include within the scope of the project to help align it, that will give us better ability to attract funding and leverage the Measure X funding and moving forward? And then there's an opportunity to phase it if we aren't able to gather all the money all at once. It's important to bring solutions to the traveling public and the stakeholders sooner versus later. So, and I'm a firm believer in that overall. On 101 South of Salinas, the project now is at initiating in the early stage of preliminary design and environmental. It's clearly an opportunity. You saw on the policy slide at the very top of the list is safety. Safety is a huge driver of this project. As you heard me earlier talk about safety and quality of life, this project can enhance the safety of the users in the surrounding community, and it also can improve the quality of life throughout. We want to make sure that whatever improvements we come up with are aligning with those policies that I showed you earlier, because we need to attract the funding so that we can basically go out and build things and make it safer for the travelers through area. It's important because this is a large project. Is from the time that we're working on it now and going through the environmental project, we need to be thinking about how can we fund and construct this in phases, instead of saying we're going to design it all as one big, huge project and then kind of wait until we get this huge amount of money to do it all at once. I really believe we have an opportunity in this project to look at how we can phase and do certain types of improvements to continuously enhance safety and ultimately get along and build the ultimate improvement. And some awesome great work has been done on this, as in the other projects, and facilitating with the community and stakeholders throughout. We need to continue that process. I know some of those activities are ongoing now and coming up again in the near future. And we need to work with the TrueLar community to make sure we understand what are the features that will make life better and improve the operations at the Main Street interchange. Now, you note here on the challenges, I also have complete the environmental phase to position the project so we can pursue funding in 2024. Now, State Route 68, we're already well into that process, and I saw this opportunity. I think the challenge we have on 101 of South Salinas is, can we get the environmental done to be able to compete in Senate Bill 1? It's a stretch goal that I have encouraged the team to pursue, and the team is open to it, but I do want to know it is a challenge just because of where we are within the process in particular. And then, finding the right balance in the improvement so that we are dealing with, the various different slow moving ag equipment out there, but taking into account the local commuters, how close the railroad is nearby, and then also the need for complete street elements to accommodate bikes and pegs at key locations throughout of it. Ag land business production is critical, and we want to make sure that we minimize those impacts and be able to initiate some of those improvements in the early phases so that we can enhance safety. And then the last project I wanted to talk about that I've been focusing on is I've been working with the team on the State Route 156 Castroville Interchange project. Design has been completed. It's currently now in the right-of-way and the permitting process is underway. The opportunities there, as we all know, it would improve safety and reduce fatalities. But going beyond that interchange, I've been thinking about the other end of the quarter at the 101, 156. To me, and from having looked at that interchange for years, based upon some of my previous work at Federal Highway Administration, also Caltrans, I believe that interchange improvement is really more about a US 101 interregional improvement and not just a TAMC focused 156. I think redefining that as a 101 interregional improvements creates a greater opportunity for a partnership with Caltrans and TAMC to advance that project and attract funding for it from that perspective. So that is something I'm focused on and want to spend time and working with everybody to talk through that a little bit more. The challenges is getting the coast development permit for Castroville Boulevard interchange. I know progress has been made on that, but it's still a challenge, and it's important that we achieve that so that the Castroville interchange can go to construction. And then we're also with the PGE utility relocation, it's important to advance that so we can get that accomplished and go to construction as well. So in summary, I really want to say that these projects and developing them, we should not just be focusing on the normal project delivery process or doing environmental design and construction, but throughout that process, it's important to think about how best to utilize the Measure X funding so that we can attain the necessary state and federal funding so we can implement these projects. With the policy and where people are looking at where they want to put state and federal funding, it's important to align with those policies so we can attain that funding. And as Doug said earlier, I'm a fan of looking at methods and opportunity to advance the implementation using alternative delivery methods where we engage in like the contractors sooner versus later and looking at different ways that we can face it. And I'm throughout my career, and I continue to believe this, as ongoing engagement with the community and stakeholders throughout the process, not just engage with them at certain milestones in the process, but they need to be part of the process throughout as we move forward. So with that, that completes my presentation, and I will pause and open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us this morning. I appreciate you being here. So let's go to the board and see if there are any board members who have questions that they would like to address at this point. I just saw a hand go up. Great. So I'll start with Supervisor Phillips. Supervisor Lopez, and then Supervisor Phillips. Supervisor Lopez, your hand was up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to thank Tony for the work and his engagement. I really appreciated the final point at the upper half of the south of Salinas slide. I think the key there of working with the community in Chular is really important, and want to call out Todd, Teresa, Doug, all for coming out to our listening session in Chular last week and really engaging with the community and listening to some of their concerns about that potential large truck turnaround over the bridge there as part of this project. I think that was great input from community, and I know that we're doing the work early in terms of being present and having our ears open. And so I appreciate that being called out in the slide and look forward to the continued engagement on that particular project.
Thank you, Supervisor Lopez. Now we will go to Supervisor John Phillips.
Yeah, thank you for your work on so many of these. But I think we have to keep the full court press on the South of Salinas project. And I just came through there again this weekend, and every time I drive through there, you kind of hold your breath. And with the ag trucks and the big semi trucks and the commuter traffic, it's a killer. And appreciate the work on 156. We're hoping we're working through on getting the coastal development permit. The other end that you're talking about, yeah, that 101 in 156, that's just a huge project, and it's just a nightmare to do because you got so many things coming together at one place, and then with all the commercial businesses surrounding that. So if we can get some state funds to look at that being not a local project, but an intermodal project, that would be huge for us. But that's the big expense of the 156 improvement corridor. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Phillips. Are there any others who wish to make comment or ask questions of Tony Harris while we have him with us?
Chair,
Yes,
I just like to appreciate my working with Tony on this. I think we made the right choice when we brought him on. There's a lot of work going on in the background as we work with the different Caltrans teams on the various projects, a lot of dedicated people working on our projects. And this is really just helping streamline the focus so we can deliver the project as soon as we can. So Tony's really helping with that. He does a great job coordinating with all the different people who touch our projects. So I think we're on a good path towards delivering these projects as soon as they possibly can.
Thank you so much, Todd. Mayor Labar has his hand raised, and I'd like to make comments as well. Mayor Labar.
Thank you, Chair. I would just encourage, especially on the South of Salinas 101 project. I know the state is really focused on the implementation of CAPTI, which I believe our agency is firmly involved, but the safety aspect on that highway is very, very important. So if there's any way that we can start including like improvements from MST on their route redesign, the surf busway projects, all of that stuff, I do believe should be included as part of a CAPTI compliant component in a more regional aspect. And then finally on the 156, I've always believed the need for a large parking complex for the Monterey Peninsula's tourism. And I would just like you to think about that, how that could be implemented in partnerships with our hoteliers and tourism destination places, that there could be a partnership available that might help with the coastal development permit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Labar. And I just want to say on my own behalf, I really share your thought about having a large parking complex at the 101-156 interchange, thinking that, again, looking at CAPTI, that there would be opportunities for a multimodal transportation to get visitors to leave their cars and not bring them onto the peninsula at all during their stay. I think that could really be a very exciting project to pursue. And again, it would have the need to collaborate with a lot of the hoteliers and the golf courses and many of the other people who work to ensure that we have a robust hospitality industry. In fact, as I look at all of the efforts that we're making, whether it's State Route 68 or the 156 interchange or the 156 road itself, as well as south of Salinas, all of it has so much to do with our economic development that it really makes it's really uplifting to have your help, Tony, with this, so that we are able to really look to the future and not just 3 years, but looking 12, 15 years down the line. So thank you for your presentation, and I appreciate the hard work that you're doing, and look forward to continue to figure out a little bit more. And again, going back to the comments that were made about looking at the 101 as an interregional project, I think that really would be wonderful to talk with the other jurisdictions that are in that general area, so that we're not looking at this as a singular kind of a problem, but it's a real, Central Coast kind of problem. Is there anyone else who wishes to make comments on this presentation? Okay, let me go out to the public and see if there's anyone member of the public who wishes to comment on this morning. Eloise, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Are you?
That's a negative, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Great. Okay, so we've gone out to the public, and I think that the only thing that we need to do at this time is to just accept the presentation. I don't think we need a motion or a vote. And please know that the TAMC staff are going to be coordinating the community meetings to discuss the State Route 68 project specifically. My office and I would be happy to do outreach so that we can ensure that we're sharing the information with constituents in District 5. So that would be something we would enjoy doing with that. Okay, thank you again for this presentation. Doug, do you have anything else for us?
No, Chair. Thank you very much. And again, Tony has just been a great resource, and we look forward to working with him.
Congratulations and thank you again. Okay, so let's move forward, and we will now go to item number 6, which is to receive the presentation from DKS Consultants on the Central Coast Zero Emission Vehicle Strategy. And I think that we have Alyssa Guther, who will be doing this presentation. And Todd, I don't know if you want to lead us into this at all.
I'll let Alyssa take it away.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to the board. So I will not be presenting today. We have Mike Usen from DKS Associates, and I'll let him take it away. He should have a presentation that he's able to share on the Central Coast Zero Emissions Vehicle Strategy.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm Mike Usen with DKS Associates. I'm managing this project for the entire Central Coast. It's a really exciting project, and I want to give you an update as to where we are today. I'm about to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Is that visible now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put it in presentation mode if I can remember how to do that. All right. Okay, so again, thanks for having me here today. We are going to cover a couple of things pretty briefly, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. So basically what I want to do today is kind of walk you through the, by the way, are you seeing, I have 2 monitors and I always get this all a little weird with Zoom because I don't use Zoom that much. Are you seeing the cover slide or the agenda slide?
The agenda slide.
We see the agenda slide, but also you're not currently in presentation mode.
All right, so let me swap monitors here. Okay. Now hopefully, let me just go back to presentation mode. Now do you see the agenda slide?
Still no. Sorry, maybe.
Right. Okay, how about now? All right, hang on. I hate this. Okay, tell you what, I'm gonna do the best I can. Are you seeing the cover slide now?
We do see the slides now, yes.
Okay, great. So now you see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, I will just have to do it in this mode. Hopefully it's visible. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
So basically what I want to do is cover the kind of who's involved and what we're trying to achieve, and then talk a little bit about where we are in the process, including some of the steps that were done. So we are, there's a number of different partners on this project. The project is being managed by SBCAG, but many different partners, and it's funded by the State of California Department of Transportation, or Caltrans. And and then there's been also local contributions from a number of different agencies as well. So why are we doing this? Well, there's 6 different objectives that we're trying to achieve here. The first is to assess the existing zero emission vehicle infrastructure, to focusing specifically on the unincorporated areas. And I think the presumption that Caltrans had when funding this project was that a lot of the planning for zero emission vehicle transportation in California has been within the urban areas. And it's true, if you look at where the chargers are currently located, they tend to be in urban areas. So the underserved part of the state are really the areas between the urban areas. And again, the focus of this project is for interregional travel, so addressing range anxiety, so allowing electric vehicle drivers to be able to travel between different urban areas. And that's a key focus of this project. So we're basically, the second goal is to identify the gaps and the challenges addressing those. Then the third, is to identify equity issues. So we know that not all areas are served equally. And so from an equity lens, that's a big part of this project. The fourth objective is to make sure that the charging that is going to be added is equitable and accessible to all users, especially for the needs of underserved populations. And that could include the residents of multifamily housing who, most charging is done at home or at work, and not everybody has access to at-home charging. So that's a particular consideration and a bit of a challenge, again, for a rural focus like this project, because most multifamily housing is within urban areas. And then the last two objectives are to recommend that the infrastructure investments and improvements, policies and strategies promote zero emission vehicle adoption. So basically, we're not just identifying where chargers are located, but we're coming up with policy recommendations. And then last but not least, we want to make sure this plan can be implemented through grant funding. So we want to present materials that come out of this that can be used for grant applications or rebates or whatnot to help provide resources to implement this project. And these are some examples of some of the different funding opportunities. Since the project was scoped, a lot of new funding opportunities have become available. And so we're trying to position this geography to be eligible for these kinds of funding opportunities. So we've had an extensive public outreach process that is ongoing, and we also have an extensive stakeholder process. So we have a number of different stakeholder types that we have identified: local agencies such as yourselves, utility providers, and then making sure that the needs of each of the different users, such as freight, because again, this is not just for light duty electric vehicles, but also for goods movement and even regional transit. Making sure that the needs of residents are addressed, and then of course those of major employers, and then the industry itself. So we've been meeting with stakeholders and asking questions such as these. We've been having stakeholder meetings. We've also been having focus groups, and of course, being this project started during the pandemic. It's also a very large geographic region. So we have a website. This is the content that's located on the website, and the URL is shown here as well. I would encourage you, if you have time and interest, to go onto this website. And on the website, you can find a number of different materials, one of which is the existing conditions report, which summarizes what's there today. And I'm going to show a couple of slides that summarize at a very high level what we found, but I would encourage you to take a deeper look and check this out. The other content that we have posted on a separate website is called Social Pinpoint. And what Social Pinpoint is an online mapping tool that allows stakeholders or members of the public to make comments on the zero emission vehicle environment within the region and recommend where chargers could be added. So we've asked for input on different types of chargers, as well as any information that locals can share. Again, this is a very large region and we want to cover a large area. So this has been a great source of information for collecting data on the local geography. So let me talk the next couple of slides about where we are today. We have completed a number of different tasks. I mentioned the existing conditions report, as well as the website, as well as the public engagement process. What is not shown on this list is last week we conducted 6 different focus groups addressing specific geographies throughout the study area. So we met with many different counties. We also met with the utilities, that's PG&E, as well as Central Coast Community Energy and others. And so we're taking this information now and developing the plan. I want to talk a little bit about what's in the existing conditions report. Basically, it focuses on the study area, where it's located, the travel patterns that are important to understand in order to identify appropriate locations to add different types of chargers. And then, of course, a very detailed inventory of the different chargers. And I'm going to show you a couple of slides that show that data. The first is right here. This is a summary of all of the different chargers by type. So the types that we're looking at are level 2 chargers, which are chargers where, typically, it takes several hours minimum to charge a vehicle, which makes a lot of sense if you're going to be parked for, say, going to the beach or going to a park or going to some kind of a destination. We also have DC fast chargers, DCFC, which are much faster chargers. That's basically if you're having to make a quick stop to refuel your EV and move on. And then we've also separated it by Tesla chargers, because Tesla chargers are used primarily for Tesla vehicles. They're not yet, they haven't yet been used for other types of vehicles because adapters haven't been circulated yet like they are elsewhere. So we wanted to separate these. And as you can see, there's quite a few different both level 2 DC fast chargers and Tesla chargers. And then one of the things that's really important to understand is the focus, again, it's within the rural areas, but for high speed, especially for high speed chargers that could be funded by the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, we wanted to make sure that we're looking at their provisions, which include they need to be within a mile of a study highway, especially for designated alternative fuel corridors that the Federal Highway Administration has already designated. And then they have to be within a mile, like I said, and that includes the chargers in the unincorporated and incorporated areas. But our focus is on public chargers, because this is very much focused on public charging, not on residential charging at say, apartment complexes or at homes or at workplace charging. It's really charging available for the public. So, this is kind of a high-level overview of each of the counties. And what you can see on these maps is that we've identified the urban areas shown in yellow, and then the different chargers are shown in the different colored dots. As you can see, most of them are located in urban areas. And of course, this project is focused on the rural areas between those. So we've looked at in these blue polygons, we're showing the areas within a mile of these key corridors that we've identified. So that's what this shows. And you can see this is for Santa Barbara County. Again, those buffered areas, and San Luis Obispo County, and also Monterey. And since this is TAMC, this is the data you're probably most interested in. And so this is a summary of the existing chargers that are there today. Again, the level 2 chargers, quite a few more of them than there are DC fast chargers. DC fast chargers cost many times on the CapEx, on the capital investment cost. So it makes sense that there's fewer of them, but they can serve far more vehicles. And then, as you can see, there's a lot of Tesla chargers as well. I would encourage you to, again, go to the existing conditions report, which will explain how this data is developed and what it means in more detail. And I'm happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So again, this is the Highway 101, as you can see, has numerous interchanges in the rural areas. So these are logical places to locate chargers, which we are currently in the process of doing. And then last, Santa Cruz and San Benito counties. So before I move on to the next steps, do we have any questions on either sort of the purpose of the study or kind of what we found with our existing conditions analysis? All right.
Go ahead. I was just checking to be sure there weren't any directors who had any questions, but it does not appear to be so. Okay. Oh, Chris Lopez has his hand up. Supervisor.
Sorry,
Lopez.
Mary.
That's all right.
A little slow on the draw this morning. Just want to check in, Mike. One thing I didn't hear mentioned in the presentation in terms of considerations, which is critical for rural counties like ours, especially those who really focus on the tourism economy, is a mapping of where our tourists are and go. So I'm wondering, are we assessing that tourism traffic to better understand how to serve those people who want to come here in their EV and enjoy our region, but say are afraid of the Big Sur coast because they are in a Tesla without that ability to charge. Also here in the Salinas Valley, we've got a beautiful wine corridor. I invite everybody to come visit. Sorry, I had to take the plug opportunity, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're drawing people off the freeway at the last minute to take that chance to run that extra 25, 30 miles along the foothills. And in that, it would be nice to have chargers. Are we assessing that as part of this analysis to make sure that our economy is supported moving forward?
Thank you. That is an excellent question. We are looking at traffic patterns in general, but not specific toward tourism. So, but I think this is an excellent suggestion. And I would like to follow up with if there's any resources that you could direct us to so that we can make sure that we're following up and collecting any information on that. Because I think for, especially like you said, for a tourist-based economy, that is very important.
Great. I'll
Actually,
follow up and
Go
plug
ahead.
you in. Yeah. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau would be an excellent place to start. And then next,
Totally agree.
good. Okay. Anything else, Chris, before I go to Chaps Paduri?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Chaps, you're up. Councilmember Chaps Paduri.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mike, for the presentation. Quick question: you had mentioned some exclusions, and I was wondering, does that list of exclusions include city infrastructure? So if we have fleet, and if that infrastructure needs to be funded as part of this exercise, is that inclusive or not?
So the one area that we're addressing fleet-wise is part of the project also covers regional transit. So we have done an evaluation of the region's transit system, which does have, of course, fleet charging, because the fleet charging needs of transit buses are very different from other types of vehicles. However, we are focusing on the rural areas and not the urban areas. So fleet would typically, most fleet charging, and we do a lot of fleet charging projects, those are located in the urban areas, and fleet chargers are not used by the public. So again, this project is focused on public charging. So I good catch, by the way. I mentioned residential and I mentioned work site. I did not mention fleet. I should have. So yes, that would be an exclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chaps. And now we'll go to Supervisor John Phillips.
Thank you. Mike, is there any movement or interest in incentivizing the private sector to get involved in this? I mean, now we drive down the highway and you see at certain interchanges, food, gas, other accommodations there. Why wouldn't the private sector convert from gas stations to electric gas stations? And is that something that's contemplated?
Well, I'm going to take that as a recommendation. We're in the process of developing our recommendations now, and that was the purpose of last week's focus groups. So I'm going to take that as a suggestion. I will add that most of the chargers that are there today throughout the study area are installed by the private sector. So for example, Tesla is a private entity that has incentivized the purchase of their vehicles by installing a charging network. Electrify America and EVgo are both private charging networks, as is ChargePoint and several others. So most of them are installed by the private sector. They do that for different reasons. Tesla is doing it as a way to amenitize or to incentivize people to buy their particular vehicles, as I mentioned. Whereas, a lot of developers, for example, will install publicly accessible chargers at their properties as a way to lure customers into shopping or whatever services they offer. But I think what you're suggesting is what else can we do providing incentives? And I think there could be a number of those, and I will add that to our list of recommendations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think our next presentation is going to be an integral part of all of this as well from PG&E. I know that there have been one place at least down the coast that is ready to put in 2 chargers, but the grid's not ready for it. So I look forward to that presentation as well. Now we'll go to Councilmember Ed Smith. Mr. Smith.
Thank you very much. Mary, I just wanted to add on one of the statements Chris Lopez had in a very good connection here is additional resources to plug into. Mike, thank you for the data and information. I think a variety of cities have done some pre-planning. We're getting applications all the time for locations, as well as where we currently have some. The focus is on where do the tourists go, and I think that was something I wanted to follow up on. So I'd encourage you to also reach out to the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau, as our chair has mentioned. Also, to reach out to each of the peninsula cities as well as the Carmel and Highlands and Big Sur. So there's a variety of studies that have been done in terms of where the tourists are going with the traffic patterns and particularly times of the year. So I think that would be helpful to plug into many of the cities that do have the tourist-centric activities. I know the city of Monterey has quite a bit of material that you might be able to use as well.
Thank you, Ed. Next, we'll go to Mayor Mike LaBar.
Thank you, Chair. My comments, we are a rural community, considered one of those underserved communities. We also have an airport. What I hope is, as we're looking at charging stations, one is obviously at an airport is ideal because that is something that will encourage that use. But I'm also concerned that we're not looking forward enough in the fact that there are new technologies coming online. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to be prepared to meet those, specifically the hybrid airplanes that are being tested and used, and more specifically eVTOLs. I think those will be coming online within the next few years. We're seeing a lot of work being done in the peninsula, like from Joby. So how will, when you're looking at placing like these DCFCs, how would an airport be able to tap into that system to be able to provide for airlines and eVTOLs? And is that something that can be planned for as you put in some of these charging stations?
Excellent, very excellent question. Thank you for being forward thinking. You're absolutely right. The future is not just surface transportation, it is also airborne transportation. By the way, I'm in Seattle, Washington, and one of the things we're doing a lot here in the Northwest is, well, we've always had an aircraft industry, and so now we're heavily focused on zero emission flight as well. This project, again, it's funded by Caltrans, which is surface transportation focused. So our scope does not include aerial or marine. For example, there is also quite a bit of marine electrification going on right now. But your point is absolutely correct, and I do think that at the very least we need to be looking at providing charging for the airport. So you mentioned I'm not sure which jurisdiction you're calling for, or you're representing.
King City.
King City, okay. And so there's it's called the King City Airport?
Yes, Mesa Del Rey.
Okay. But certainly in terms of for the surface use is a focus. I think, going forward, by the time we get this done, we're starting to, the industry is in rapid state of what I would call disruption right now. And we're seeing multiple types of, we're also seeing automation of transportation. We're also seeing things like inductive charging and hopefully dynamic inductive charging, which will essentially revolutionize everything we're doing. So you're right, we're very much focused on kind of the near future in terms of our technology rather than the long distance future. But we're trying to stay within the scope of the funding agency.
Okay, and I do understand that. I would just encourage, though, there may be areas where you could identify where having infrastructure in place, it may be cheaper to add an extra connection point for later on, since a lot of the work would be done in that area, especially with the DCFCs requiring more power. It seems like that would be, when you work with the jurisdictions, if you could identify for future use and where you could tap in something extra to make it cheaper to add on later. That's kind of my main point, but thank you.
Excellent suggestion. We will add that recommendation.
Thank you, Mayor LaBar. And now we will go to Supervisor Wendy Rudascu.
Thank you. And thank you for the work on this and just the coordinated regional work on something that is a moving target, it's got to be just a big challenge. It's so many of the things that we work on. But the question that I have is, in our staff report, there's reference to the need to ensure that our disadvantaged communities, and including residents of multifamily dwelling units, are also being planned for. And I didn't see that called out specifically in your presentation. If you could just speak briefly to what's happening to ensure that we're meeting those needs as well. And I recognize we talk about the need to continue expanding out our housing capacity, especially along the 101 corridor and transportation corridors. But so much of that housing that we desperately need needs to be higher density. So if we're talking about higher density housing, where people don't have the ability to pull into a garage and plug a car in, I feel like that's this missing piece. And if we're building out infrastructure along, our transportation corridors, but then relying on that's the only place that our multi-unit housing residents can utilize to charge, we're at cross purposes. So just maybe if you could speak a little bit to what the plan is to ensure that we're meeting those needs as well.
Well, you raise a really important point, and that is that, as I mentioned earlier, one of the objectives of this project is to address equity concerns. And charging is not equitably distributed, especially for the residents of, primarily for multifamily housing. Most existing multifamily housing was never designed, anticipating electric vehicles would be charging in their parking facilities. And so their electrical services were sized to meet the loads of the apartments or the condos rather than, of charging vehicles. So it's very expensive typically to upgrade those facilities, and especially for more affordable housing, there's not a lot of incentives to do that. And so that's number one. Number two is that the focus of this project again is on the rural areas between the urban areas, and most multifamily is located in the urban areas. So I think the way we're handling that is we're going to be recommending building code upgrade recommendations for reach codes, as well as for potential incentives for retrofits. Certainly the most cost-effective way to add charging is when you're building new construction, because you can size your electrical service to meet the load for the future. The second best is when you're already doing if you're doing a major facility upgrade. So for example, when a property changes hands, a lot of times the seller will make improvements to the property to bring it up to code. The last and the most challenging is when you don't have a direct incentive. So that is something that we will be discussing in the plan as well.
Okay, thank you. And I think yes, of course we do have a lot of multi-unit apartment housing in our city, incorporated cities, but we do have quite a bit of it in our unincorporated communities as well. If you look at, we're talking about Chular earlier in the presentation, and Castroville, and there really are a lot of our affordable housing is centered in these unincorporated communities. And then the final just comment, as you continue to work with stakeholders, I'm assuming that Ashley Paulsworth and the Monterey County Sustainability Team is actively engaged in your work, but if not, we need to make sure that connection gets made. So thank you again for the presentation today, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rudascu. And next we'll go to Bill Sabo, our airport specialist.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm using a new computer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're
Oh,
NC.
I'm glad. Thank you for the presentation. As some may be aware, I'm kind of involved with our airports, and I see at our airports that there's a tremendous number of automobiles that are rented there, and both at the Salinas Airport and at the Monterey Airport. And also we have a lot of pickups and drop-offs using Lyft and Uber. In holding your focus group meetings and meetings with key stakeholders, are you including those groups, the rental car companies that have large fleets, and also the Uber and Lyft group? Because I think the idea is to get as many rechargeable vehicles on the road as possible, and they have needs.
excellent suggestion. The way our well, let me zoom up to the stakeholder slide. I think that's your question here. So we have, I do not, you know, again, we've been focusing on these stakeholders. I do not see sort of shared mobility as a stakeholder group. So that's a great suggestion. We had not. I think we should look into that. So thank you for the suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, it's back to you, Mike.
So where do we go from here? Well, as I mentioned, it doesn't show on here. Well, actually it does. It says hold the focus groups. We've already held 5 of them. And maybe we need to do a 6th one for shared mobility, because I think that is a really good question. And also, you know, some of the other issues that various folks have brought up. You've made some good suggestions, and I've been dutifully taking notes with a pen. So we are now in the process of doing the evaluation report, which is basically looking at suitable infrastructure, and the input that you gave today will help inform this. And so we're looking at a number of different factors. Again, we've talked about the focus groups. We are going to be holding another public workshop, I think, once we have this preliminary draft completed, and then we'll be preparing a draft and final. Our goal is to complete this spring. We're trying to wrap up our draft of the next phase, hopefully by the end of this year. So that's kind of where we're at. And I really appreciate the input and suggestions and the questions that you provided today.
Thank you very much, Mike. It was a very interesting presentation. Alyssa, I'll send it back to you. Oh, let me go out to the public and see if the public has any questions on this. Sorry. We've had lots of good board input. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment on this item and presentation? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Again, I'll just echo the comments of the others that just thank you so much for the presentation. I think with the state's leadership on moving toward zero emission vehicles, the presentation is timely and very much appreciated. Is there? I think that the same question that I had before would probably be more appropriate at the next presentation, but just asking if there's anything that we can do locally that will make installing the vehicle stations easier on both homeowners, business owners, and developers. And I think one of the items that we've been clear about is that there is a difficulty in getting approval for all of these. So we'll look forward to hearing next what we can be doing there. So again, no members of the public, I'll give it back to you now, Liz. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mike, and thank you, board members, for all your great input and questions. I see Mike has put into the chat, or I can share with the board the link to the interactive mapping tool, and on that tool you can input specific areas, locations where you think chargers should be implemented, or just add comments about certain corridors that you think you can highlight where chargers charging infrastructure should be placed. So that's another great tool to add further comments and insight as the project goes along. And I'll be actively working with DKS and with the stakeholders and continue to be reporting back to you on the progress of the strategy. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So with that, we will close this item and move forward to our next one, which will be item number 7. And that is another one that we've been looking forward to, which is going to be led by Todd. So rather than my giving any more comments, why don't you just go ahead and kick it off for us?
Thank you, Chair. Last month and recently, we've had several discussions about electrification. A lot of great questions and comments from the board. We were talking about our state legislative goals, and electrification came up, and various future technologies. So when we knew we had this study scheduled for this board meeting, I reached out to Jenna Arnold, our local government affairs representative from PG&E, and asked if PG&E would be willing to come and present some of their work towards getting the grid ready for all of these electric vehicles that are expected to be coming our way. So I appreciate Jenna's assistance in this. She's also been helping us with our needs on the 156 Castro Boulevard project, trying to get the coordination done so we can get through the utility components for that project to get to construction. So thank you also for that help. Jenna in coordinating put Babetta Nagra on in connection with me, and she's here with us. Please correct me if I mispronounce your name. We've actually not spoken in person in the live, so this is a great opportunity. But she'll be presenting PG&E's work towards transportation electrification and future technologies like vehicle grid integration programs. So I'll let her take it away.
Thank you, Todd, and thank you, board members, for having me here today. I'm going to share my screen real quick to make sure you can see what's on my desktop. All right. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so again, thank you so much for having me here today. It's nice to meet everyone virtually. My name is Babita Nagra, and I'm a Government Relations Program Liaison for PG&E. Focused on transportation electrification, I support Gina and our local teams across the service territory with just supporting cities and counties and regional efforts to electrify their vehicles. So today I'm going to give you a very quick, I could go for hours talking about these things, but a very quick overview on PG&E's portfolio of work focused on supporting transportation electrification efforts across the service territory. So I want to start first with the Clean Energy Pollution Reduction Act, Senate Bill 350, which was signed into law in 2015. This was really California's legislation to recognize the role of energy companies in developing necessary EV infrastructure and to help the state meet its climate and clean air goals. And this is really where PG&E started to develop our strategy to support electrification of transportation across the state. And so this is a little overview of how we plan to support this effort. PG&E's main goal is to expand our electrification transportation programs and offerings to support electrification of California's roads and support EV vehicle adoption for all our customers. We believe we can do this by developing a charging infrastructure network that makes EVs viable for all of Californians, ensuring that owning and operating an EV is cheaper than the gasoline fuel equivalent, or alternative, I should say, and spread awareness of the benefits and cost savings of EVs compared to conventional vehicles. And then lastly, I heard a lot of questions and comments around innovation and new technologies that might be out there. We also have one of our key focuses to test and implement innovative technologies so that we can make EVs more affordable and accessible to all of our customers. And some of that work also relates to some of those new technologies that you were discussing earlier. Before we go any further, I just want to kind of do a knowledge check to make sure everybody knows what type of chargers are out there and what they're useful for. There's 3 different types of charging stations. Level 1, which is L1, which is typically a 110 voltage home outlet. It trickle charges your car, provides on average a 5 miles of range per hour of charging. And typically all cars come with this type of charger. A level 2 or L2 is often abbreviated to. It plugs into the same outlet as your dryer at home. Utility work may be required in order to install this type of charger. L2s charge faster than L1, and you can typically get between 13 and 25 miles of range per hour of charging. And then finally, we have our direct current fast charger, or DCFC. And this will fuel your EV the fastest. It can take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes to charge up your car if it's empty. And this is most synonymous with filling up your car at the gas station. And then at the bottom of this graphic is actually a really great website that PG&E has put together to talk and educate folks about EV charging, pge.ev.com. Oh, sorry, ev.pge.com. If you want to learn more about this technology, you can visit that page there. So next, I know we get a lot of questions about how is PG&E preparing for the grid. So I wanted to address that. As you can imagine, electric vehicles are going to be coming onto the grid, and PG&E is ensuring grid capacity and reliability to support electrification. Our most important responsibility is to deliver this, our energy safely, reliably, and in a clean fashion to our customers at the lowest possible cost. And so how we're doing that, we're continuing to work with new and existing customers to meet their energy needs and provide updates on additional capacity and when it's going to be expected to meet that demand. Each case is a little bit unique, and our engineers are working through various scenarios and solutions. You know, if you're in the middle of your planning efforts, connect with PG&E and let us know that you've got a project coming. On a larger scale, what we're doing is we're also using a forecast system to analyze localized load impacts for electrification. So if you're able to, you know, let us know that you've got a project that's 3 or 5 years out or 2 years out, that'll help us prepare for your project better. And then internally, our leadership teams are actively engaging assets and service planning analysis to understand performance and identify the need for potential grid enhancements to make electrification possible. We're doing a forecast and reevaluation each year, and it's incorporated into recent policy, technology, and market data. There's a formalized process that we have for this. So PG&E is definitely aware of the situation and taking the steps to acknowledge this. So we're going to dive right into where does PG&E fit into the equation of an EV project. And there's kind of 2 different pathways for this that a customer can take, and cities and counties as well. So for any project where a customer is installing EV chargers, PG&E will install to-the-meter infrastructure for EVs, or EV charging, I should say. Traditionally, this is done through service planning, and this is the blue arrow on the top, which is from your meter backwards to the transformer to the distribution line. And then through PG&E's EV infrastructure programs, which is that second path, PG&E will do that and provide financial and/or construction assistance for behind-the-meter infrastructure. And this would include like panel upgrades, wiring, wiring for parking spots, or even the charge port itself. But this depends on which infrastructure program we're going to talk about, where we'll cover that work. So I want to give you a sense of what to kind of expect if you are pursuing an EV project and going through service planning. This is our EV customer roadmap for PG&E service planning and design. So if you're pursuing a project and you're, you know, done some due diligence, you know what vehicles you're getting, you know the location, and perhaps you want to get a better understanding what the load might look like for a project like that. You might have hired a consultant or a contractor to work with you. The best advice I can give you is get your application into service planning. What that will do will assign you one of my coworkers within service planning to be assigned to your project. And you can see here on the map on the green and blue, you're going to have some things that the customer is responsible for, and then mostly some things that PG&E is responsible for. But you're going to be working together on this project until it's completed and essentially energized. I can go a lot more into detail onto this roadmap, but I'm going to pause for there, and hopefully you can read it at your own discretion. But just wanted to let you know, for a project that a city, county, or the region is pursuing on its own, service planning is a great place to start. I'm going to jump into now our current PG&E EV infrastructure programs. And so PG&E has currently about $400 million in approved EV infrastructure investments to support the carbon neutral future. And so I'm going to talk about 4 programs that we currently offer. The first one is EV fleet. And so some of you had mentioned, you know, what electrification programs are there to support fleet electrification. This is the program. This is going to help customers with medium duty, heavy duty off-road vehicles convert their fleet vehicles to clean electricity. We're currently accepting applications for this until about 2024. And this program, PG&E is going to provide the make-ready charging infrastructure for on and off-road medium-duty vehicles. So this might include like your light, heavy-duty trucks, medium-duty trucks, heavy-duty trucks, transit buses, commuter buses, school buses, airport, ground support equipment, forklifts, port cargo handling equipment. We also just accepted our first marine vessel into this program as well. So a really great program to get you prepared for that future. And for this program, all we need to have is the customer show us a purchase order that they are actually procuring electric vehicles, and a plan for that strategy to increase. And so if you're interested in this program, definitely go to pge.com. You'll be able to access all the information there, or you can just ping me and let me know that you're interested, and I can take you away on our journey together. The second program that I'm going to mention is the EV Fast Charge program. So this is where PG&E pays for, coordinates, and facilitates construction of electrical infrastructure from the utility pole to the parking space. We recently completed our 4th round of application solicitation for this program. So at this point, we don't foresee another round, but this program was really a great advantage for cities and counties for public destination charging. We had a lot of cities and counties submit applications to this. Our next round of programs is EV Parks in Schools, which launched in 2021, and it's available for customers to enroll in. EV Parks is aimed at installing electric vehicle charging at parks or beaches, and this will include installing at level 2 DC fast charging, where PG&E will own, operate, and maintain the EV service equipment for up to 8 years. Here we're really partnering with the state with identifying parks across the service territory and installing those charging infrastructure there. EV Schools is a similar program, but it's aimed at obviously schools. This is a 2-year program. We're going to be installing level 2 ports and providing EV curriculum development and educational outreach at schools. Again, it's available to participate in if your school districts are looking to electrify. It's a great program to get that incentive. And again, PG&E is covering that infrastructure cost, as well as providing rebates for the chargers itself in that program. So those are the programs we currently are offering. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the proposed programs we've got. So PG&E formally filed a proposal with the CPUC for an extension to 2 of our EV infrastructure programs, EVCN and EV Fast Charge. We did that in October. Just some background on the EVCN program. That was a program that ran until 2021. It was focused in installing level 2 EV charging ports at multifamily units, workplaces, and this proposal is really built off of the success of that program. If it's approved, it would run for 5 years to support electric infrastructure for charging up to 16,000 level 2 and DC charging ports. So quite a large program. It'll support passenger car and truck EV adoption by installing charging infrastructure at multifamily housing, workplaces, and public destinations. Part of the development of this program was actually reaching out to local governments and our communities across the service territory. And they were like, we need public destination charging, we need workplace charging. This is where, like mentioned earlier, this is where the need is, and definitely multifamily housing. So we aim to invest at least 50% of the program in what we call AB 841 priority communities, which I'm actually going to talk about in the next slide. But I did want to know if this is approved, we should hear back from the commission, I would say within the next 6 months. And if we do get approval on this program, it'll be available to participate in likely sometime next year or in 2024. So just building off what AB 841 priorities communities is, this is direction that we were provided from the CPUC to focus on disadvantaged communities across their service territory. Here you can see on the screen, this includes at least 75% of public schools in project areas, communities that are located belonging to federally recognized California Indian tribes. And you can see there's a lot of different other criteria here, but this is particularly what we're using on our new proposal to define what disadvantaged or priority communities is. I'm going to jump next to some of the programs that we'll be launching in the next year or so. We talked a lot about EV infrastructure programs, but PG&E also has residential programs as well. Empower EV actually launched in August, and this is an equity program for customers within the income level of 400% the federal poverty level. We're serving it up to 2,000 customers, mainly focused on in San Jose, Fresno, and the Pittsburgh Bay corridor. and we're going to be essentially installing residential charging for these customers. We have the resilient charging pilot. This is actually launched in August as well. This is to increase resiliency for EV customers during public shutoffs by encouraging customers to plan ahead of any outages. We've also got our pre-owned EV rebate, which is launching hopefully next year, the first quarter of next year. And this will be a rebate that will be for customers. We have our multifamily small business direct install program, which will be also launching next year. I'm going to run through these slides a little bit quicker, sorry. And then also some other fun charging solutions and our research fund that will also be launching next year. So I heard a lot of questions about how do we support electrification on existing buildings or new building codes. Well, AB 841 ordered that electric corporations design and deploy a plan around electric distribution infrastructure. And so this is a new rule that will essentially cover the cost of utility side distribution infrastructure for customers installing EV charging. We believe that it's going to help California meet its aggressive ZEV goals. And essentially, the logos that you see here, we expect these developers and customers to really enable electrification. We've already started working with them to deploy chargers where PG&E essentially covers those costs. And here's a little bit more about Electric Infrastructure Rule 29. Essentially, it's working in conjunction with Rule 16 and Rule 15, if you're familiar with those. But essentially, it expands the cost coverage for to-the-meter work for non-residential EV charging installs. All right, I'm going to get into a little bit of a different topic, which is our vehicle-to-grid integration project. This is a new technology. Just to give you some terms or terminology to understand what VGI means, it's pretty much a vehicle-to-grid integration, but it encompasses both V1G and V2X, which is vehicle to anything pretty much. So this is a new technology. PG&E is very new in the space. I'm definitely new to this, so bear with me for any questions around this. But we recently were approved 3 VGI pilots totaling about 11.7 million. This is the nation's first large-scale bidirectional charging pilot. There's 3 of them, just to walk through some of the details. Pilot 1 is a residential vehicle-to-grid pilot targeting 1,000 customers. Pilot 2 is a commercial vehicle-to-grid pilot targeting about 200 customers service-wide. And then Pilot 3 is a vehicle-to-microgrid pilot focused on mitigating PSPS events for up to 200 customers. All 3 pilots offer upfront ongoing performance-based incentives. Customers in disadvantaged communities will be eligible for higher upfront incentives to help reduce the affordability barrier. And just gonna move to the next slide real quick. Participants will have 2 options. So there'll be 2 phases. In phase 2 of pilots 1 and 2, participants will be allowed to choose between 2 options, remaining on their existing time of use rate and receive event-based incentives, or participate in a dynamic rate, a real-time pricing option. There's some other details included in this. I could go like for hours on this, but for the sake of time, I'm just kind of rushing through this. But what you really want to know is probably what the incentives will look like. So these are some of the incentives that will be available. I'll give you a minute to read that. And you're also probably wondering, when can I enroll in it? So we're going to have pre-enrollment start pretty soon on the 14th of November. We're going to have a website on our on pge.com. It'll probably be pge.com/VGI. That page is not active right now, but it'll most likely be that. And these are some of the participation criteria to be included into that program, or these programs, I should say. And then lastly, I went over a lot of information. PG&E does have a lot of resources and tools to help support customers. Most notable on the bottom there is the Distribution Resource Planning Data Access Portal and our Integrated Capacity Analysis Map. This is a new tool that PG&E has developed where customers can go in and actually see what capacity is available in a particular area if they're looking at installing chargers in a particular location. Maybe it's a city hall, maybe it might be a library, and you're just wondering, like, how do I even get started with things? So you can log into this access portal and actually see what's available for you through the distribution grid. And from there, if you have a larger load that you want to have come online, you can definitely, like I mentioned, go through service planning, submit your application, and have PG&E work with you on that particular project. So I'm going to pause there. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. We can continue the conversation, but we'd love to welcome some questions.
Supervisor Adams, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I wanted to thank you for your presentation. And now I see that we already have several hands raised, so let's just jump right in. The first will be Mayor Mike LaBarre from King City.
Thank you, Chair. Great presentation. A couple questions. On the close to the last slide where it said V2M, some of the new technologies, what was an FTM generator?
FTM generator. Okay, so I'm going to look at my other screen, sorry, because this is really small on here. Are you talking about on the actual program?
On the microgrid one. So in the picture, it shows an FTM generator.
Right
I just didn't see what that was. I couldn't find that.
Yeah, so on some of our microgrid concepts, you're able to have a generator as part of the, I would say, final solution of things. So this is an example of that kind of concept of a site.
So it could be like a dual cycle natural gas generator or some stuff like that to enhance it for the consistency.
Exactly. And this is what I can say about the V2 projects is everything is more conceptual at this point. So if there's a solution out there that you're exploring, I think PG&E is open to exploring that option with you too. So
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. You also, on your Empower EV slide, you had mentioned the people who had qualified are PG&E customers. So there's several CCAs where the electrical portion customer is different, but there's still a PG&E customer on distribution and gas. Would they be eligible, or do they need to be all three PG&E customers?
On that particular, yeah, that's a great question. On that particular program, I'm gonna have to check into it. For a vast majority of all of our programs, it does complement CCA customers, but for that particular program, I'm gonna have to find out and get back to you, if that's okay.
Thank you. And lastly, we're talking about the incentives for like multifamily, the housing and workplaces and those programs. I was just curious, does PG&E engage the industry associations so they know that information? Or is that information that needs to come through the public entities like our cities and TAMC?
Yeah, great question. So we do have a quite robust marketing and communications plan for all of our programs across the service territory. We've also done working sessions and we also have a really great series of, what do they call it, virtual sessions on our website. So yes, we are working with a lot of different stakeholders across the service territory, but I also believe that there's also a role for local governments or the community to play. So if you want information for us to send to certain associations, definitely let Gina know or myself know. We can get you some materials over to send to whomever you'd like to. But yes, we do already coordinate quite robustly with stakeholders across the service territory.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And now we have Chap Spaduri from Pacific Grove.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again for the presentation. It's very detailed. And before I go there with my question, I wanted to thank Todd and team. I mean, today's agenda is like perfectly falling in place with all the items, so thank you. But to the question, it seems like there's an ambitious plan here to set a lot of things up with the infrastructure and whatnot. Could you comment if you're aware of it, like for the future, what are the sources of energy here? Are we talking about clean sources of energy that PG&E is trying to tap into? Where do you expect the future sources of energy for PG&E to be at?
Thank you for that question. So I can address it. PG&E has a very robust climate action plan where we're working with the state to identify clean energy sources. And so that's where we're headed. If you'd like, again, this is probably another presentation for about 45 minutes that we can go into, but our goal is to deliver clean and reliable energy. And those sources come from, different renewable technologies around the state, focusing on increasing our infrastructure and delivering that energy in a clean fashion. So, board member, if it's okay with you, if we can maybe send you our climate action report, which will outline all of those things in detail for you.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I appreciate it. And perhaps everyone might be interested in it. So maybe you can circulate it to Todd and we can take it from him. Thank you.
An excellent suggestion, chaps. Thank you for that. And next we have Bill Sabo.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the presentation. You've done a very good job of reflecting what PG&E is planning for point of service delivery. We at the airport are doing strategic planning right now for some rather substantial capital investment to support electric vehicles, vertical takeoff and landing airplanes, and also these rental car fleets. And I'm concerned about not just point of service delivery, but is PG&E really doing some planning on the grid that is going to be necessary to supply all this power and the purchasing or production of power to support all this network? Because we're going to be putting a lot of money into this whole thing, and if it doesn't appear that we're going to get the power or it can't be delivered to our locations, we're going to be in a world of hurt. Do you understand my question?
I do, and I appreciate that question. And I want to acknowledge that we have heard this concern from multiple other, customers, stakeholders, and also other airports. We're working with quite a number of other airports in the service territory on their electrification plans. If there's an opportunity for me to be part of your discussions and your planning process, let me know. I'm definitely open to that conversation too. But you bring up a good point, like how is PG&E going to serve all of this electricity to all of our customers? So what we've been doing so far is some of the, I would say, early adopters who already have their plans together have been working with our service planning team to identify what their loads will be. And we're kind of taking it by project basis to understand when that load is going to come online. And then long-term wise, like in our service planning queue, we're trying to identify where those peaks are, where that energy is going to be needed. We're working with the commission to develop a long-term plan to address those concerns coming on board and see if there's infrastructure developed that needs to support that electrification too. So it's kind of like a multi-pronged process, taking it from an individual project basis, understanding when customers need their load, and then the kind of long-term process as well. So identify how do we sustain this long-term.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other board members who have questions or comments at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else's hand raised, so I will go to the public and see if there's any member of the public who wishes to make comment or ask questions on this presentation today. I am not seeing any comments or hands going up. Are you seeing anything, Eloise? Okay. No
That's a
problem.
negative, Chair.
Thank you for that. Okay, so with that, let me turn it back over to Todd and see if there's anything else that you'd like to say or comments you'd like to make.
Just appreciation for Bita joining us today and sharing all this information. Really appreciate it.
It's very, very helpful. I think many of us have been concerned about some of the things that she's touched on. And I think as well, there was the comment about perhaps we would be able to circulate the information that Chaps Paduri mentioned. So my hope is that we might be able to make that available to all of our directors.
We will do that, yes.
Good. Okay, thank you so much. With that, then we will close that item. We have received the presentation and very much appreciate your being with us, Babita, and look forward to additional information coming forward. So now we will go on to item 8, which is to receive the reports from our transportation providers. And the first one is our Caltrans report and project update. And I see we have Scott Eads with us. Scott, are you with us and interested in making a report today?
I am.
Good.
Again, Scott Eads here. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see you this morning. And I have a few items. First, I wanted to comment on a couple things that were in your agenda earlier. With respect to the Measure X project discussion earlier, I've had the opportunity and pleasure of working with Mr. Tony Harris for many years. And I think this is a good choice by your staff. We're really looking forward to working closely with Mr. Harris and TAMC staff on these important regional projects. And with respect to the ZEV topics and the zero emission vehicle and the charging, had a report or some statistics to share on ZEV ownership in California. So according to the California Energy Commission, California ZEV sales are up to about 18% of all car sales in 2022. And that's up 42.7% from 2021. So we are, moving in the direction we want to in terms of ZEV sales, really moving up in terms of the overall cars that are purchased. And that compares to about 4.9 state US wide in 2021. So significant difference here in California. Then I wanted to report on a couple of grant programs that are upcoming. First is the Clean California Local Grant Program, Cycle 2. So there's been a one-time increase of approximately $100 million available for the Clean California Local Grant Programs. A call for projects is expected in January. Caltrans is right now working on application guidelines, and we have a couple of workshops that are are scheduled already. The first will be held on Thursday, November 3rd from 1 to 2:30 p.m. I can provide more information if anybody's interested in that. And that again is preparing us for the next rollout of that Clean California Local Grant Program. Second is we're also preparing for the 22-23 Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. The ZEV item that we talked about today, the charging infrastructure, that is a study that was funded through our planning grant programs. There's 3 different categories that we're preparing for. One is the Sustainable Communities Grant. We're looking at around $30 million that will be available. There's a new program called the Climate Adaptation Planning Grants, and there is a good amount of money available this time. It's $50 million that's available, and that's a new category. And it's really, focused on climate adaptation, areas that are stressed, and ways to come up with plans that can respond to that and end up with the right projects and solutions. And then the final is the strategic partnership grants, and there's $4.5 million available on that. So there's a draft application guide that was just released. It's out for a 30-day comment period, and comments are due on November 4th. So if you're interested, follow up with me. I can provide more information on where to find that. There's also a couple of workshops on the application guide on November 9th and 10th. So again, follow up if you have any questions on that. And then the last thing, and Todd will probably touch on this, so I won't steal too much thunder from Todd, but we're really excited about the active transportation program staff recommendations from the CTC. It's not final yet. They're yet to adopt the program, and I believe, will do so in December. But there's a lot of good news there in terms of local communities applications, as well as TAMC's applications that appear to be recommended for funding, or they are recommended for funding. So really great news there. Todd will probably have more to share. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Scott. Is there anyone who would like to ask questions at this point? Any hands zooming up? I am not seeing any at this point. So Scott, thank you very much. Good news for us. Thanks. Next, go to the Monterey Peninsula Airport. Mr. Sabo, you're back up.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I always appreciate the opportunity to act as a shill for the airport here. But the good news is that people are using our airport, and that has always been a struggle for us, both from the peninsula and from the Salinas Valley. And what we see in our statistics is that everybody's using the airport, and they're struggling to get down Highway 68 to get to our airport, even in the traffic. But what we know now is that our enplanements are exceeding pre-pandemic levels, which was a big goal of ours. So we're healthy, and we're doing well, and we're growing. And we're, as many of you know, we're planning in our master plan, we're planning on possibly a new terminal and the infrastructure to support that. And we're patiently waiting with bated breath for infrastructure funding from the FAA to provide the necessary funding for that. So more news to come on all that. And the really good news is that we started a service with American Airlines to not only Phoenix, but Dallas-Fort Worth in the past year. And now we have done so well with that traffic to Dallas-Fort Worth and connections out of Dallas to anywhere in the world, actually. The American has decided to put mainline airplanes on there. That means bigger airplanes, no more regional airplanes. And so the capacity is going to be increased next February. There's going to be 2 a day of the big airplanes. And it's the first time we've had big airplanes in 50 years, so that's a big significant step forward. And that's going to be very good for our residents and also for our tourism industry. And I thought I'd mention the fact that the fares currently out of Monterey or San Jose or San Francisco have been enormous. I just took a trip to the East Coast, and it took a second mortgage to buy the ticket. But in February or January and February of next year, I have to return. I noticed that the prices have dropped by more than half. So if you're planning a trip, at least my experience was that you can kind of buy 2 tickets for the price of 1 and this was American, but I think all the carriers are doing the same thing. So anyhow, we're doing a strategic planning meeting that will be available to the public. That will be on November 4th, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm sure everybody's going to roll out of bed to get to attend that, but it's available to find out exactly where we're going with our master plan, the new terminal, and our priorities. So thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for letting me do my thing.
Thank you very much for doing your thing. Next, we'll have Monterey Salinas Transit. Is there anyone with us today from Monterey Salinas Transit, MST, for presentation? Okie doke. Then we will go over to the Monterey Bay Air Resources District and David Frisbee. And you're muted at this point, David.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We've got a lot of things going on right now. Electric Vehicle Incentive Program of $350,000 granted out, or for the program. We've granted $250,000. So we're making progress. We should be finishing the program this fiscal year. So that's providing about $2,000 per vehicle for applicants in the region to purchase an electric vehicle. we had 50,000 set aside for electric bicycle incentive program. That program was so popular that it closed within 6 weeks. And most of the grant funds went to low-income households. So that was very exciting to see that. We've got about 50 bicycles, more than 50 bicycles incentivized. So our electric school bus program, we've experienced supply chain issues. There's been delays in delivery and manufacturing. So we haven't seen any buses delivered recently. Probably won't expect to see any until first quarter of 2023. Some of our grant programs from DMV fees that we collect from the each of the registered vehicles in the region. Part of those funds go towards electric vehicle infrastructure projects. We're looking at 2 projects potentially right now, working with ChargePoint and EV Range. There's a project proposed in Castroville at 156 and Merritt, and another at 1463 North Davis Road in Salinas. So those are on just being considered right now for approval. More DMV fees. Our board had approved and awarded projects in Monterey County for one is a roundabout at Reservation and Davis Road. Gonna provide $350,000 towards the construction of that project. MST will receive $350,000 for a zero emission zero emission bus. And Meals on Wheels is receiving $10,000 for a Ford E-Transit cargo van. And the city of Salinas will be purchasing a Ford F-150 Lightning. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the board on Mr. Frisbee's presentation? Not seeing any hands. Any member of the public wishes to comment or ask questions on this presentation? Okay, seeing nothing, then I will close our transportation providers reports and call for item number 9, which is any member of the board needs to report on meetings attended at transportation agency expense, which is a requirement from state law. Anybody go anyplace or do anything? Yes, Mr. Labar.
Thank you, Chair. Monday, I attended our legislative day on rail issues with the the Coast Rail Coordinating Council, and thank you, Dave Potter, for getting that set up and working with staff to ensure that. Very productive and really reestablished our relationships. We met with Mitch Weiss, Executive Director of the CTC, Jeannie Ward Waller, the Caltrans Director of Planning and Modal Programs, along with Shannon Simon. Also Mark Tolfason, Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Governor Newsom, and then finished off with lunch with the Chief Deputy Secretary for Rail and Transit, Chad Edison. I'm sure staff received a lot of good information, but it was well worth it. Thank you, Chair.
Excellent, great. Thank you for your report. Anyone else? Any other hands coming up?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I was also in attendance, as Mike said, at the meetings on Monday, but I also went on Tuesday. I went over to the Sonoma Marin Smart Train ride with Christina, Todd, and Alyssa. Alyssa drove very confidently. Christina finished off the ride, but it was a good time. So we went over there. We had dinner at we checked in the Embassy Suites, had dinner at Toscana's, then went over to the rail. A very, very good ride. It was great to get up there. Really a good tour. I'd recommend anybody that wants to get updated on contemporary projects, how they get implemented, how they get funded, and how to operate. It's a really, really valuable experience. I got back about 6 o'clock last night.
Thank you, Dave. Great report. Any questions or comments? Okay, anyone else go anyplace? Wait, sounds not like it. No, okay. All right, we will close that item and now go to the best item of the report for the meeting, which is our executive director's report.
Well, I appreciate that. And I also appreciate Scott not spoiling my big reveal. The California Transportation Commission staff recommendations for cycle 6 of the active transportation program grants were released last week. And this is really exciting for us. If my count is correct, there were 7 projects in Monterey County recommended for awards totaling $44.8 million. And those are projects ranging from San Ardo, King City, Chular, 2 in Salinas, and another segment of the Forteg trail in that segment's in Marina. And this ties also into Scott's Scott's announcements of new grant cycles coming up. Because what we do when we have grant cycles coming up is we share that information with our technical advisory committee, all the jurisdictions in the county. And we also follow up when we think there's projects that are particularly well suited for those grants. And I believe TAMC staff participated in 5 of the 7 active transportation program grants and helping write them and in coordinating our efforts, particularly with our Safe Route to School program. So it's how we help support our member jurisdictions and maximize, hopefully maximize the funding that comes to our region to improve our community. So very excited about those recommendations. The California Transportation Commission will vote, take their final action at their December meeting, which is split between the 7th and 8th. So unfortunately, when we meet on the 7th, we probably won't know the final action. It will take place right after or the following day. So we'll be sure to let the board know when the final action is taken. But generally, these staff recommendations are approved. There's usually not that much change from the recommendations, so we're very excited. And then other exciting news is that Governor Newsom announced that he's going to be ending the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency order on February 28th of next year. So we'll have an item on our executive committee agenda to talk about transitioning back to live and in-person meetings. The new Brown Act legislation is a little complicated, but it generally means that we need to have, it doesn't generally mean, it does require that we have at least a quorum of our board live at the meetings. So we'll be working out a process to implement those new rules. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that concludes my report.
Thank you, Todd. Does anyone have any questions for Todd? Or comments? Tell him he's doing a great job. Let's see some some applause out there. Thank you. Thank you. I see Supervisor Alejo has his hand up.
Yeah, not on this point, but I wonder if Todd could just give us a quick report. I know the governor's infrastructure czar, Antonio Villaraigosa, was making rounds all over the state on infrastructure. And I know MST and TAMC were invited to present at that meeting. So any reports from that important meeting?
Thank you for bringing that up. Last week, the former mayor of Los Angeles did come to Monterey County with entourage, including members of the governor's cabinet. And there was a roundtable meeting in the morning on Tuesday at CSUMB where various folks from different transportation agencies such as TAMC were able to talk about issues and how what our needs are and what other issues that we have in delivering projects. And then I was able to drive the mayor and his group on a tour of a couple of our projects, and we visited the Surf Busway project, and we also went over to the Salinas train station. While I had them trapped in the car, I went through a couple other projects that we have needs for federal funding, and then brought them back to CSUMB in the afternoon, where they were able to meet with mayors from around the Monterey Bay and chairs from the Board of Supervisors. So it was a very productive opportunity to share our story about our needs and convey that to the mayor.
Thank you for bringing that up, Todd. That was great. Thank you, Luis. Anything else? Okay, great, very good. Thank you for the update. I think we're all going to be looking forward to December 8th to see how we did, but it sounds like it's all very, very positive. Okay, so are there any other announcements or comments from transportation agency members on anything that they may want to put on our next agenda for the meeting that will be held on December 7th? Anything goes. Seeing nothing. Okay, all right. Well, I do not see any additional hands raised on anything. No one seems to have any announcements they need to make. Then we just have one more item that we'll discuss today, and that is adjourning. So thank you all very much for being with us today, and I appreciate all the time and effort and all of the work that we're doing. We've got some exciting times ahead, and I look forward to seeing you in December. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.